You know, here we go. It was only 3 days ago I was on my feet asking for the Minister of Defence to release his report that was given to me in March. And on the theme of the same rubbish, different day, another minister is sitting on a report that was handed to her in March. This time it's Minister Rishworth. Seriously, this government was all about calling out the Bloom team for their lack of transparency in opposition, and they promised during the election that they would be transparent. But as soon as they got into government, what's happened? The transparency went out the window. Just last Monday, the Senate voted on my documents or an order of production of documents, requiring the Minister of Social Services to provide the latest evaluation report from the University of Adelaide in relation to the Cashless Debit card, commissioned by the Department of Social Services. Next day, 2nd of July, my office got a letter from the Minister Rishworth stating, and I quote, "It will not be possible to produce the document requested in the time provided for the order to be tabled, and I will seek to comply as soon as practical," end quote. I tried again on the Wednesday and put forward a motion requiring the tenants of the Minister to comply with the production of documents by 5 p.m. You know, anyway, the Minister has actually failed to comply, just like the Minister of Defence. Minister Rishworth, you've had that report since March. But you know what, Australia? I'm not going to take a wild guess as to why Minister Rishworth doesn't want to share this report with the people of Australia, who, by the way, paid for it, like they paid for the other government reports. So here is my guess, and it's not a guess because I've been back around these communities. I've done more than anybody else in this chamber, by the way. I've been on it for 9 years. You tell me somebody else that's been through to Ceduna and spent 3 years, 3 days maximum at a time on the ground there over this period of time. I reckon that says by removing that cashless debit card, it caused massive harm in those communities. I've been contacted by communities, and I continue to do so on a weekly basis in those trial areas, who have told me that without that cashless debit card, kids are going without food again, alcohol is rife again, and domestic violence rates have gone through the bloody roof. And the Minister doesn't want to hand over that report because it was one of the election promises that they withdrew with some dirty, filthy deal they've done with the Greens at the harm and expense of our Indigenous communities. When that card was withdrawn in September 2022, Minister Rishworth was proud that she delivered on a key election promise to abolish the failed, she called it, cashless debit card program. Except it's not a failed program, is it, Minister? Is it, Minister? That's why you're hanging on to it. That's why you're hanging on to that report. I bet you're scrambling around trying to work out what to do, how you're going to spin this one. You ain't spinning it. You ain't spinning it. And you ain't spinning it through me, nor will you be spinning it through the chair, through Senator Ruston. She's been on this for a while too. She's start to finish. I would like to remind both ministers, Australian taxpayer paid for those reports again. Minister Linda Burney said at the time that withdrawal of the card was a result of listening to the community voices. Well, let me tell you what Minister Burney does. She really does her homework, because I can tell you, they haven't told me that since that cashless debit card was put in, the communities that I visited several times and stayed in touch with say they begged the Labor Party not to remove the card. I remember being in Ceduna when the then Shadow Minister for Human Services, Linda Burney, flew into Ceduna, apparently to talk to the community about the cashless debit card. I was flying out of Ceduna on my way to visit the other trial sites in Western Australia. I'd spent 3 days on that trip, like every other trip, in Ceduna, and I travelled to 3 communities outside Ceduna to hear what the people had to say about that card. So I was flying in and the Shadow Minister, Linda Burney, was flying out, but guess what? I found out later. She was there for a few hours. She was there for a few hours. And you know what the Greens did? You know what the Greens did with the cashless debit card was around? You only seen them when it was election time. And you know why? They went in, they met the people against the card, which is probably about half a dozen of the community. They come in the morning, had their nice little cups of tea and walked out that afternoon. No time on the ground. They didn't take their swags out there, didn't go and hire a car and go around the communities for 7 or 10 days straight, didn't go back and visit them. They just went and heard what they wanted to hear. And what you have done, what you Greens have done in these Indigenous communities is disgusting by having that card withdrawn. You have brought more harm than ever before. Get off your butts and get out there and go and see those communities and go and do your job properly. You should be ashamed of yourselves, an absolute shame of yourselves. What you have done to these communities, you widen the gap and you are shameful.